So I don't know if you guys know this, but I've seen a lot of Ryan's work for the last quite a bit of time. I remember when he even quit Twitter for a while. I was really sad about that. I was disappointed in people and said, you guys shouldn't be so mean, I don't like this and all that. And, I'm very happy that he actually came all the way up to Bozeman, which I'm actually pretty surprised that he took all the time to come up here. So I hope everybody is very excited about Ryan coming. He's a great guy, really awesome to see all the things he's done. And so if we can get a nice round of applause for him coming up here, and it might even be HTMX Sucks, I don't know, is it? I have no idea. I love your MooTools shirt.
You gotta do the pat.
Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah. You making fun of me already? He's chuckling back there saying MooTools. That's where I went to elementary school. Well, I'm Ryan. Gotten way too much praise so far. I'm just a developer like everybody else here. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. It wasn't too much of a drive for me. Kent and I just drove up from Salt Lake City and actually went to school in Southeast Idaho. So I know that's not Montana, but it's halfway from where I'm from. And I forgot just how beautiful it is up here. It's fantastic. So yeah, happy to be here. The title of my talk on the website is HTMX Sucks, and now you're going to hear about it. Carson sent me a Twitter DM, and he said, hey, why don't you come give a talk called HTMX Sucks, and now you're going to hear about it. And I was like, actually, I think I got an idea for that talk. But then he said, be nice, stay positive this morning. And Alex, was it Alex who was like, I can't change the title of my talk? You can absolutely change the title of your talk. I've done it many times. So here's this one, Mind the Gap. It's the same talk, though. So lately I've been speaking at like more concentrated, or I guess more cohesive communities. Like I walked up to get my badge, and they're like, what's your name? And I was like, that's new. So I just want to give you a little bit of background on my political leanings in the web development world. I grew up on MooTools. I used Rails. I wrote a ton of PHP on the LAMP stack. I used to set up my own VPSs with Linode, setting up IP tables. I would not be able to do that anymore. I mean, thank heaven for serverless for me. But just to give you an idea of where I kind of sit, React, not React, React with a T on the end. React shills think I'm a React hater, and React haters think I'm a React shill. So that's where I'm at, just so you have a little background on me. So mind the gap. This image is a picture from my house in Washington. We don't live there anymore. We remodeled our master bed, bath, and a laundry mudroom underneath it. And as you can tell from this picture, it was beautiful. My wife is great at interior design. She designed it all. And these were solid white oak inset cabinets. All the margin on those cabinets, I guess is what we'd call it as web developers, was immaculate. If you went and looked at the margin on all those little tiny tiles, I don't know if you can see from over there, but they're like those tiny little hexagon ones. It was the same. Like, the grout was all the same color everywhere. The spacing was perfect. It was immaculate. This is the master bed, and likewise, perfect craftsmanship. It was absolutely amazing. And no, we didn't have blinds, and the neighbors complained. But anyway, the joke was not planned. Sometimes they just pop in there, and I'm like, why did I do that? But where these grids meet up, so that wall, if anyone here has ever like worked with your house before, none of your walls are straight. They're a disaster. Once like you actually like try to put a piece of wood on it to make a grid, you're like, oh, what on earth? So the workers, they like put in a million shims, and like they basically redid this wall and made it perfectly flat. And where these grids meet, you could get right up against them, you could rub them with your hand, and you could not figure out which cuts they made, if they set the vertical ones or if they set the horizontal ones. It was so perfect, it still blows me away. So, why was it so perfect? I was out of town, doing workshops. And this is me at Spotify. They had a full stack Marshall amp back there, so I had to play it. But I work at Shopify. It's very confusing. Meanwhile, my wife was the one at home talking to the contractors, and she can't make trade-offs. She demands perfection in everything in her life. I like to think that's why she married me. But in the end, it cost $250,000 to do 3 rooms. What is the right response? I had to get a therapist. Like, I lost it. I was so angry at my life. I was working my butt off and then writing checks to these guys. But it was beautiful. It really was. This is also why, even though I'm a developer of a web framework, I don't have a Lambo. But everything is about trade-offs, right? Do you want the $250,000 remodel, or do you want the $50,000 remodel, right? You eventually have to make a trade-off, and some people don't want to make trade-offs. And I'm actually one of those people as well when it comes to front-end user experiences. I don't want to I want no jank. I want to get rid of the network whenever I can. When the user clicks a button, they need feedback immediately. I want all of that stuff, but I understand it comes at a trade-off. Tech is really unique because sometimes trade-offs disappear in tech. We can bend them until they go 0. Carson, what does this code do? You're old enough. I think you're the only one older than me.
Beautiful layout code. Come on.
It's not just layout code. Rounded corners. I'm so old that I was doing web development before CSS and JavaScript were created. Looking around, I think there's a few of us in here. And this is what we had to do to get rounded corners. It was nuts. And no, you don't have to close your p tags, by the way. You don't have to do that in HTML. So yeah, it's super fun. Yeah, man. So this is terrible. So you'd have to look at it and be like, is that really worth it? Like, I could have a square border, or I could have a rounded one. And then you get a million constraints if you go with a rounded one. What if we change the background color? What if we want to stick one inside of this, right? A rounded corner thing with a rounded corner thing inside. Now you've got like 8 million elements that are just pointless everywhere. So you always have to balance that question. You have to say, what's the technical cost of this thing, and what's the product benefit? If the cost is too high, you don't do it. Even though there are product benefits, it costs too much. Other way around, of course, you're going to do it. If the cost isn't too high and everyone's like, yeah, that's going to benefit the product a lot, let's throw the rounded corners on there. But sometimes tech lets us drop that technical cost to near 0. Border radius. That's it. That's all you got to do now. You don't have 8 GIFs or GIFs, CompuServe. When you have 0 technical costs, only product decisions matter. Right? So this is what all the framework authors are trying to do. We're all trying to get that technical cost of adding features to your app, back-end or front-end, as close to 0 as we can, because we just want to make product decisions. We just want to do something if we think it's going to benefit the product. And we don't want the whiny engineers to be like, no, that's going to be really hard for me to do, which is why I got into programming, turns out. Here are some back-end, typically back-end, I guess mostly back-end frameworks. Rails is really special to me because it's why I'm a web developer. I would absolutely not be a web developer without it. I had no right building the kinds of things that I built with Rails back when I was earlier in my career. And it lowered that cost for so many features for me that I was able to do it, and it was awesome. Django, Laravel, Elixir Phoenix, all these things decrease tons of costs. Something's been happening recently, too, with cloud services like AWS and Cloudflare and Firestore, I'm sure there's others, where they're kind of taking over some of that job of those back-end frameworks. You've got databases, you've got authentication, you can easily connect to LLMs to add those AI features and get a bunch of VC bucks. Cloudflare is particularly interesting. They got these things called durable objects, and if you know how they work, please come talk to me. I know that they're amazing, but they're weird, but they're fascinating. So the job of backend frameworks is still super important, but we're kind of seeing cloud services get involved there too. On the other side of the stack, and this is where I've kind of spent the majority of my career now, is on the front end. For the people that want the $250,000, oh my gosh, it hurts my soul just saying it out loud. That's how much our second house cost. Who want that like user experience, you got to throw all the rendering over into the browser. so that you can click and then immediately render. And so backend frameworks and cloud things are doing their thing over there and just perfecting that and decreasing costs. And then the front end world is over here decreasing costs to have super dynamic user interfaces, which for the most part is templating in the browser. Or click this, change that. So what's going on now in web development? We got the two sides of the stack that have gotten very mature and are very good. So we're going to start talking about this. So Aaron he came up with this visualization for one of his talks videos on YouTube, and I thought it was just like a great way to visualize this. So I borrowed it from him. So I'm going to start with backend frameworks. They typically, especially when I started using them, you got your database, your ORM, controllers, views, all that kind of stuff, right? And then you got the network in the middle, and they don't really do a whole lot there. And then on the other end, they hand off the HTML, and they're like, all right, there's your HTML. I'm done. My job's over. I'm a full stack framework. And then the browser manages the network, right? You click a link. The browser says, oh, what's the URL? I'm going to make a request. I'm going to go to the server. I'm going to render the page. And then the user submits a form. The browser goes, oh, I'm going to serialize this form. I'm going to send the form data to the server. Server comes back with a response, and then it's going to render it. So typically, back when I was using Rails a lot, I work at Shopify. We still use Rails like crazy, and I love Rails. But when I was, I guess, an indie dev kicking out new projects every week, it was the browser that was doing the network for me. And then something crazy happened. PJAX, push state AJAX. I think GitHub still uses it. PJAX said, you know what, it's a lot like HTMX. How about we just hijack the links and then replace the page with whatever the XML HTTP request came back with, so you don't have to re-download CSS and JavaScript and do all that kind of stuff. So let's just update the page without making making a brand new document. And then the backend framework started to creep over into the front end, and they're like, you know what, let's cross the network. We're going to introduce these tools that can cross the network back and forth, and we'll even do some of the updates to the DOM, like patching things. A handful of these, Hotwire. I forgot to put the Turbo logo on there. When you search for Hotwire logo, you get hotwire.com also. We got LiveView, and we got Livewire, and all of these are generally built on the idea that we want to keep templates on the server, and whenever we need to render something new, we'll go ask the server to render it, and then we'll patch the document with whatever the server says. LiveView, Phoenix LiveView, is really fascinating because it's a lot like a React DOM diff, but like over the wire, where it's not just sending like the HTML, it actually sends instructions like change the class name or swap the order of these two elements. So really interesting. They even have like hooks for like when it mounts, to then hand off something to JavaScript. Eventually, you hit some sort of limitation over there, and you want to bring in a front-end framework for interactions that are network sensitive. If you're doing like a drag and drop, and you drop a card from Monday over to Wednesday, and you let go, and the card doesn't stay on Wednesday, and it goes back to Monday, that's what I'm talking about. Those are irritating for me. I know a lot of people don't care that much about it, but like, I lose my mind, and I throw my laptop out the window. And so when you have those network-sensitive user interactions, typically these abstractions say, yeah, we have hooks to now hand off over to something else, like Alpine.js is a really popular one that people like to use because you got to keep doing stuff right there inside of your attributes. I made a thing like 13 years ago called MooTools Element Filters, and it's essentially the same thing as Alpine, but nobody uses it, and I used it like twice, and then I got a job somewhere, and we didn't use MooTools, so it was really sad. HTMX comes in here too, right? That's what everyone's thinking, since this is not HTMX conf. But it doesn't do anything on the back end. It's not a back-end framework. It does a little bit on the front end, because it can update all those pieces of the DOM, but it's not really a front-end framework. It's a front-end framework of piece. So what are the front ends doing? So these front-end frameworks that have been very hyper-focused on rendering in the browser instead of back on the server, we've solved, I'm going to say we here on accident a lot because I feel like I'm a full-stack developer, but thanks to Jamstack, I got split off into a front-end team, and I quit going to lunch with my friends, and I quit remembering how anything works on a server, and now I just think about the DOM and focus management. But anyway, we've done a very good job over here of abstracting rendering in the browser for a stateful environment, right? Rendering on the server it feels a lot nicer to me because it's stateless. Go get stuff from the database, kick out the view, it's over. But in the browser, like, they could have that tab open for a week. Like, what are you going to do about that? We've all kind of landed on that state drives components that then updates the DOM, and then we get these effects. And so we kind of ended up with this model where you've got the backend framework over here doing all of the product and business logic. You just render some JSON to the front end, who then does a whole bunch of fetching. So the browser's no longer doing the network for us. We are writing all of this like code in the middle to talk to each other. And this is why most React apps should have probably just been PHP or Rails or Go or something rendering just HTML. Like, we log into those kinds of front-end apps all the time that are just a disaster, and that disaster is because of this network gap in the middle. That code is hard. How do I get the data from my server into my view without causing a bunch of jank and stuff and without having to write an enormous amount of code to do it? So front-end frameworks, like back-end frameworks, recognize this is a problem, this network gap. And so we started coming across the gap as well, simultaneously. With Next.js, with Redwood.js, Remix, that's the one that I work on, SvelteKit, Solid Start, we basically can come back over to the back-end, and it's a lot like a controller over there. It's like, okay, we can get data on the server, and we can handle actions on the server, mutations and stuff, and then we can get that back over to the front end, and then we'll have some abstractions to manage all of the pending states in between while we're talking over the network. So we've got, and then there's a big gap over there on the back end, and we fill that in either with a pile of services and just pray that you don't ever get very many users until you actually have a business model, or you fill it in with something like Cloudflare and AWS, and they've got all the things you need, or you've probably already got your Rails app or your whatever app back there, and you can use the backend as a front end, and you'll just talk straight to that thing on like the same network or something. So this is where we're at right now. This is what the world looks like. This is what everyone's arguing about. This is what everyone's upset about. This is what I make videos about. This is where the party's at. The network is where the party is at. We've both solved our end of the stack so well that it's like, okay, where do we go now? And here we are, in the middle, partying it up. Now there's one that I've left out here, and that's Inertia. Inertia's super interesting. Anyone use Inertia? Yeah? It's pretty cool. So Inertia says, you know what? Why don't we just embrace that there are front-end frameworks that people want to use and there are back-end frameworks that people want to use, and let's have Inertia cross that gap, but bring the templates from the front-end framework back to the server and say, okay, front-end framework, you get to render, but we're going to handle the requests. We're going to do everything else. And then on the front end, Inertia has some stuff to work with that. So what that ends up looking like is this is like the PHP side of Inertia, where it says, hey, Inertia, I want you to render the event show component in a React app. And it's actually it'll actually server render that from the PHP server. You can see it's passing some props over to the front end right here, the ID, title, start date, description, all this stuff. They're like, here, hand that over to React. Then on the React side, you can write things like a submit handler and say, hey, router post over to the users with this form data. So it's built this bridge across the network, and honestly, it looks really, really similar to what we built with Remix. Very, very similar model. The difference is the Remix server gets the requests versus the Laravel server gets the requests. But same idea. So we got the two sides of this stack, and we've got these things trying to build bridges between them. So it's a big party. There's another one I want to talk to you about. React itself decided, you know what? Remix, Next, Redwood, those, all three of those are React frameworks, by the way. React's like, we're going to do your job. You guys can stop doing that. React itself wants to get involved with the network. And I find it incredibly fascinating the way that they've done it. And the point of my talk today, I've got a little demo that I'm going to show you. I'm not going to try to convince you to use React. I'm not going to try to tell you, like, it's better than everything that you're doing. I think it is. But all I want is for you to be curious about it and stop making fun of front-end developers. So, did you see what happened up there? I'm going to do it one more time. The way that React does this is it's not building a bridge between the back end and front end. It's dissolving the network. It just disappears. With React 19, I don't know if you've seen any of their stuff, but the network disappears. And when the network's gone, all that's left is your product. You're not thinking about how do I pass this data from the server over to the front-end views? How do I get this click handler to then like go and update my database over here? You're just never, not only do you not really have to think about it very much, but you just don't even see it in the code. It's just not even there. So my demo is going to be a little bit difficult, and I've been practicing it. And like when you make a demo, you always think, okay, this is the part where everyone's like, whoa, and then they clap. But like, I couldn't figure out how to create those moments because it just looks so subtle. You're like, yeah, that just looks like React. And it's like, no, but it's not what you think. So I'm going to give it a shot. We're going to see if I can do this well. So here's a little demo. And this is a Next.js app. And so it's got errors down here already. Oh, boy. I'm just kidding. That was rude. Low blow. I'm here representing the React Nation. And so I'm using my competing framework. Also, Remix doesn't have server components yet, so that's why I'm using Next. Check this out. Here's my app. I got a subliminal message up there for you. It's just rendering like little stock tickers, right? This is 100% server-side. There's no client-side JavaScript running at all, except for just like the Next and React runtimes are in the browser. But this template, this table, did not go to the browser. 100% on the server. So I think at the moment this is still HTML as the engine of application state. Hypermedia, by the way. You guys know that? HTML as the, oops. That's right, that's what it is. Okay, I gotta make sure that this works because it's not my framework. Oop. Okay, now it works. Okay, so first of all, here's what's really cool. When the front-end dorks come over here and we're like, hey, guess what? We're going to do stuff on the server. And you're like, oh, boy, who let them do that? Look what we do. I'm going to save this file, and my server-rendered thing, here, watch. 3, 2, 1, save. We got hot module replacement with server-rendered pages, which is really neat. There's no way you could get us front-end developers to do server stuff if we didn't have these kinds of developer tools. So like I said, this is all on the server so far. Requirements change, and somebody says, oh, wait, no, let me show you this. So right here, I can change the direction, so I can change this to descending. Let me get my TypeScript in there. Help me out. Thank you. I can't spell descending. There we go, and then we go back to ascending. Boop. So you can see that thing is updating over there. So all server templates, we got these nice little props that we can tell it how to render, and then a product manager shows up and says, or the designer is like, these should really be clickable headers, right? I've seen clickable headers on the internet before. How hard could this be? So I'm looking at this as a front-end developer, and I'm like, I really do not want to click this header, go to the server, and say, hey, server, I want to sort this differently. I'm only showing 50. This isn't like an 8,000 list where the sort is going to change what I'm rendering. It's the same stuff. And I can't do that. I can't go to the server and be like, server, let's spend 200 milliseconds crossing the network and the 200 coming back, and then I'm just going to flip the order of these rows. It would feel terrible. So this is what I mean by a network-sensitive user interaction. Those exist, and the best apps, you pretty much never notice the network if they can pull it off. That's the hard part. So my requirements changed. I want you to think in your favorite stack, what does this look like? The next steps I'm going to do to get this template over to the browser, to get a click handler on the headers, to then resort all of the rows, and requirements you might not know about, make it super accessible and announce that the sort changed. I'm going to go like this. I'm going to say table sortable. I'm going to call this a sortable stock table. I'm going to switch this over to sortable stock table and save. Hey, See my little, oops, wrong side, this side. Boop. See my little guy right there? No network involved. It's just flipping around now. So this is the part where people, if they knew what was happening, would be like, whoa. But instead, you're familiar with React, and you're like, yeah. One of the tables did sorting, and one of them didn't, right? That's what the app code feels like, right? Like we've all seen React people be like, look how cool that is, and now we're over it. It's been 10 years. We've gotten so good at this way to compose behavior that it's just like, it's not interesting. But let me try to show you what really just happened. So I'm going to open up the network tab over here. I'm going to shrink it back down so it looks a little bit better. And let me undo this back to what it was. So I've got 3 JavaScript files. It doesn't matter what the names are, but you can see that I've got 3 of them down there. And then when I switch this to a sortable table, so now it's sortable again. See this page thing that shows up? I'm going to reload so that we can see it. Now I've got 4. I've got this page thing. Somehow, just by switching which component I was rendering on the server, remember, I'm still rendering on the server, I just swapped this out for a sortable stock table. Somehow React knew, hey, that template that you just rendered on the server, I'm going to need that in the client too. So kind of make a copy of it and send it down to the browser and then keep on rendering it over there. And now when I click on this, it can just sort the table. But there's another subtle thing that happened. These stocks right here were props that are just getting passed to a component. You've seen React components do this a million times. Remember, last time, none of this stuff went to the browser. It all stayed on the server. So I was passing props from one component to another on the server. And that's very easy to think about. And like, of course, we've seen that 1,000 times. But now, remember, this template ran on the server, got its stocks, and then it got teleported over to the browser. And as I'm clicking and rearranging this, it still has that prop of stocks. How on earth did it get it if it's in the browser now? Normally, we would see a fetch somewhere. We would see that Inertia code that says, hey, here's the server handing stuff off to the browser. Here's the browser fetching from a router or some other kind of hook to go and get stuff, right? Normally, there's a network there. But we don't see a network at all. All we see is prop passing. See how it's kind of dissolving? This literally gets serialized over the network, and you're like, oh no, there's going to be problems. What about if it's a secret? We got React developers are not as dumb at backend stuff as you think. So anyway, some alarm bells are going to go off as you're looking at this, and I'll try to address some of them. All right, so next requirement comes. Oh, so how does React know? This. So this component right here, the sortable stock table, has this use client up top. This is our border radius of the network. Right? I don't have any of that network stuff to get my stocks to a client template. I don't have any bundler looking stuff either. I don't have a script tag at the bottom to say, oh, and then I'm going to need these JavaScripts for this view to get there. I just say use client, and then React, as it's rendering on the server, goes, oh, here's one for the browser. Oh, here's one for the browser. Bundles them up, and then just sends it. Network dissolves. Look at this. These are just props. Just props coming in, just prop passing. So now you're thinking, all right, or the product manager comes back and says, hey, we need to save this because when the user reloads, it goes back to that sort, and they want to be able to like log into any computer and remember the way that they like to sort their stocks. So can you save that? Some stocks are more important than others, such as NVDA. 3 more months until it's capital gains for me, and then it is gone. I'm just kidding. I don't know if I'm kidding. Anyway, so how am I going? So now remember, I'm in a client component. I'm in the browser now. I'm in a browser template that's still got server rendered, but I'm in the browser, a totally different environment. How do I get back to the server and cross the network to go talk to my database? Well, I'm going to bring in this function called save user sort. And here's my little on sort change, and I'm going to say save user sort and save that. Now I'll come over and click. Should be name descending, reload. course it's not going to work because I'm demoing. Oh, I know why it's not working. I'm not passing my prop. So I got to come back up here, and I got to say sort is await get user sort. So now I'm back on the server. This is my server component. This is my controller, right, providing values to my view. And I come down here and I say, all right, I'm not going to hard code this sort. I'm going to get it from my database, which is actually a JSON file on my disk. But we're calling it a database today. Okay, so now if I come back here and click, it should be sorted by name. Woohoo! Yeah, but you see, sure, the feature worked, but like, do you really know what happened? Yeah, no. We have no idea what really just happened here. I appreciate it though, very much. He was the first one. He's like, let's clap. But like, all I did was pass a prop again, right? This just looks like React. It's nothing to clap at. And then over here, in this thing, it's like, yeah, you brought in a thing called save user sort. Like, did you put it in local storage? You probably just put it in local storage. Not a cool trick. We've seen people do this 1,000 times. Well, what is save user sort? This says use server. So now we're creating a portal, not from the server to the client, but from the client to the server. We're just going to portal right through the network, and here I am accessing my database. I've got access to all this stuff. I can go talk to my delayed jobs. I can go do whatever. I can talk to React from my React app and tell the DB, hey, set that sort. But do you see how it's just sort of, like the network's just gone? So what is this? What is this function? It didn't bring in, it didn't bring in this database to the browser. So when I import this function, save user sort, and I'm accessing it here, and I import it up here, the bundles that React made, remember how I told you when it sees a use client? And it's like, oh, I just rendered this on the server. I'm going to make a version of this for the browser. That transformation that happens, it looks and it says, oh, what did you import? You imported a server thing. Okay, I'm not going to put that code in this template. I'm going to make an RPC function out of that. That's what it does. You can await it. It's just a promise. It's just a function that you can call. So while I very much appreciated the talk about put, post, patch, delete, I love HTTP, kind of irrelevant, because if I just want to say update user or replace user or delete user, you see how network semantics just kind of like, it just fades away. It's gone. It's only the product stuff that remains in this code. So I'm going to come back over here. React has been on the front end for a very long time, and I think they've nailed it. The network has been very, very hard, though. React is like, you know what? I'm going to do the network thing now. And the way that it does it is so fascinating to me because it literally disappears. And us React developers, we have been doing this component composition thing for 10 years. We are really, really good at it at this point. And so don't be surprised by how quickly and how well we fill in the rest of the stack now that React can cross the network for us. So my request to you is to just pay attention. Thank you.